All right,
All right.
everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great follow on topic from our last podcast. We're talking about what happens after Quitter's Day. So, kind of the New Year's resolution or the beginning efforts of a long term endeavor, where we talked about Quitter's Day is the second Friday of the year. I think it's Dr. Hall can correct me, but it's something like obnoxious number, like 80, 90% of people, if not higher, don't make it past that second Friday. So now we're going to talk about what it takes to carry that on through the remainder of the year. In the first topic, we talked about setting accurate goals and objectives. Make sure you're measuring and monitoring what you're doing, and just a lot of just great information about how to set yourself up for success. So if you haven't seen that podcast, I definitely recommend viewing that one. Uh, you can, obviously watch this one and then go back or however you want to do that. But we're going to dig deep into the master skill, the delay of gratification, and how that plays into both the consistency and the discipline aspect of how to make your efforts fruitful. So with that, let's bring Dr. Hall in. He's a business psychologist, an executive coach. He's a multi-time author and public speaker. We're going to specifically talk today about the neuro nerd side of him and how it is that we execute on the things that we talk about, how our brains are wired. We hear a lot about what we should do, but not necessarily how exactly we should do it. So we're going to try to dig deep into that and cover a lot of ground. So with that, I'll bring on Dr. Hall. How you doing, Dr. Hall?
Uh, really great today. Thank you, Jared. Glad to be
Good,
here.
good. Real quick, I'll ask you, and then we can dig into it. Do you set New Year's resolutions?
No.
Okay. Well, you can tell the audience why not, but and maybe it's a shift in perspective or what have you. But obviously, that's a timely topic since we're at the beginning of the year. And then just when you set these efforts in motion in general. But before we do that, let me get some housekeeping taken care of here. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jared Lee. I'm the associate broker at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the perfect real estate business. We've spent the better part of the last couple of decades developing this out, now in large part with Dr. Hall, introducing aspects of business and life coaching, mentoring and training, and then just a lot of components and attributes that should exist in your real estate business that you may not have otherwise thought of. If you have any questions or want to learn more, feel free to reach out and we'd be glad to help. And then with that, let's bring Dr. Hall in and hear why it is that you don't set New Year's resolutions.
Uh, I just don't set them. I think for years, back when people wrote checks, my only New Year's resolution was not to write last year's date on this year's check. Um, I, you know, I I do spend every year between Christmas and New Year planning my year. I look at the purposes of my life. I look at what are the large themes that I want to focus on with my life plan. But I don't set a New Year's resolution like I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to because um, I know it doesn't have to be January 1st. January 1st is an arbitrary day.
Yep.
I don't know if you knew this, but do you know why we have April Fools?
I do not.
We have April Fools because April 1st used to be the first part of the year. And when they changed it to January and people said Happy New Year on April 1st, they called them a fool. Uh,
Interesting. I did
so,
not know that.
so, so January 1st is an arbitrary date. Do I set resolutions for myself? Yeah. Um, I have goals, but they come up when they come up, not just on January 1st.
I think there's a lot of wisdom and even some beauty in that because if you don't hit your New Year's, first of all, most people are making New Year's resolutions probably days, weeks, hours before, New Year's resolution. They haven't planned it out, thought about any of the things we talked about in the first podcast. And, you're kind of set up for failure if you don't, how am I going to accomplish these things? All right, I'm going to get to the gym. Okay, you didn't think about what time you're going to go, how you're going to get there. Like, anyway, all the things that you need to do to set yourself up for success. So I like the planning aspect of it, not failing the beginning of the year and feeling like you got to wait till next year before you start to begin to think about how you can, make improvements and plans in your life.
Right.
So
I, if I want to change a habit, I start changing that habit, when it becomes apparent to me. And it's usually not January 1st. There are other things that I'm thinking of.
yeah, I think there might be a little bit to be said for depending on what that habit is. Like, hey, if you're going to go on vacation, don't say I'm going to be in the gym you know, every other day or something, right? Start your gym habit, go on vacation, come back. And I'm only saying that because I know it can be deflating, right? Because we've talked about, I think about this in prior podcasts is, once you interrupt that habit and then you come back, it's like, oh, now you got to restart that plan, that effort. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this sense that I've got to make up for everything I missed on those days off. No, you don't.
Get back at
You
it.
just start. You go at it. I think we talked last time about 75 hard. I never understood that because you have to start back at the beginning. No, you make that cycle so painful and so onerous. People eventually give up and they feel like a failure, as opposed to I'm going to do these things, and if I miss a day, I miss a day, and then I'll go back to it the next day.
Yeah, I really want to dig into that when we get into consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk a little bit more about my habit tracker that I briefly mentioned last podcast. But um, yeah, I think that 75 hard is, I think, and you can tell me if there's wisdom here, is trying to teach you to, well, you know what, let's talk about that when we get to consistency, because I think when we talk about what that means, I think consistent or 75 hard might help that effort. But anyway, let's talk about the delay of gratification first, and why this is your master skill. And this is just a beautiful thing, in my opinion, in my experience, and it's been life changing for me. Life changing tossed around a lot, but I think this is of the utmost importance when we're talking about consistency and discipline. So, can you share with the audience what it is and why it's so important?
Delayed gratification, the ability to say no to yourself now for a small immediate gain in order to say yes to yourself later for a larger, more satisfying gain. That's all delayed gratification is, and it is the master skill. It's not a master skill, it is the master skill. If you look at anyone who's successful in anything, they have had a consistent pattern of telling themselves no. They're good at it. No, I won't do this in order so that I can do this other thing. Peyton Manning, at the end of his football career, he won the Super Bowl, and they asked him, what are you going to do next? And he didn't say he was going to Disneyland. He said, I'm going to have a beer. And they said, you're going to have a beer? He said, I haven't had a beer in I don't know how long. So, in other words, he's told himself in most of his adult life, I'm not going to drink a beer because it keeps me from being at my highest level. So he tells himself every day, no, I'm not going to have a beer. And once he's reached this pinnacle, he's going to go and say, I'll have a beer.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say he's going to have a case of beer. He's going to have a beer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been telling himself no for something that he enjoyed in order to put himself in a position to achieve a Super Bowl. Oh, okay. That and lots of other things.
So is it the case where when you're saying yes to one thing, you're saying no to another type of concept? If I'm saying yes to beers here and there, I'm potentially saying no to a Super Bowl championship.
You're potentially saying no. You're not absolutely saying no, but every success is 1,000 tiny little decisions telling yourself no of things that would be more pleasant right now in order to get an anticipated bigger reward later.
The one I've been really thinking about is, I I've changed. I've omitted a lot of things in my life, that people would count as pleasures. Coffee, alcohol, blah 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 blah. And for me, it's because I want to not only be present for my grandchildren, but I want to be, as active, as fit, and as present as I can be. It just popped into my head, so I'm guessing that's delay of gratification.
Absolutely, absolutely. You say you don't drink. You say you don't drink coffee and you don't drink alcohol, and you do that for health reasons.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no virtue in saying I don't drink alcohol because I don't like it, or I don't drink coffee because I don't like it. The virtue is I like it, but I'm going to refrain from it because I am intending to get something that's more important to me. Yes, that's the delay of gratification.
yeah. So how does one get to the point where they can focus on the long-term objective? Like Peyton Manning, uh, he obviously has been told he's got a lot of talent, a lot of skill, he's got a lot of potential, and that makes sense to him. But when most folks are setting a goal, it's easy to say, you know what, that all sounds well and good, but I don't even know if I can get there. But man, this donut looks really good. You know, sounds really good.
um, then they're going to eat the donut.
Right.
It's you've got to start small and build the habit of the delay of gratification in areas of your life that you've already done it. And if you haven't done it in any area of your life is such a train wreck that you're probably not going to start. What we know is it appears that the delay of gratification is developed in early childhood. And so if you haven't gotten it in adulthood, you're 20 or 30 years behind everybody else already practicing this skill.
Yeah, you're gonna have to undo a lot of bad habits that you've learned in order to learn the delay of gratification. Not to discourage everybody, but you got to understand that all those sodas and beers or donuts or whatever's getting in the way of your long-term objectives, you're gonna have to teach yourself in adulthood how to be self-disciplined, delay your gratification.
Yeah, if I don't play the piano and I'm a fully grown adult. If today I say I'm going to learn to play the piano and then I get frustrated that I'm not as good as somebody who's been playing the piano since they were 4, who's
Yeah.
my age, well, of course I'm not any good at it because I don't have any practice at it. And the delay of gratification is like any other skill. It's practice. You just got to practice. And if you haven't practiced yet in your life in adulthood, then it's going to take you a long time. Most people have some experience in the delay of gratification since childhood in some area. So if you like donuts, that may be your area of temptation, but you may have done a really good job of delaying the gratification of like, I'm not going to watch this television show because I'd rather learn this thing. Okay, well, then you apply the delay of gratification that you got in entertainment versus learning a skill to a donut and better health. And I'm not anti-donut. I'm just
Right.
I'm anti a dozen donuts.
Right. Yeah. So you had told a story, and I think we got time, and I think it's important. Children that were analyzed, assessed, whatever the word is, studied for marshmallows.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like for you to tell kind of the objective there and the outcome of that, because I think it's important for folks to know.
Yeah, so Walter Mischel, this was a landmark study. He's written a book on it. Mischel has since passed away, but in the 1960s, he did an experiment with kids, and he wanted to see what strategies they used to delay gratification. And this was in the area of developmental psychology, where you study kids and see how they develop normally. And so he gave these kids a marshmallow, and he said, I'm going to go run an errand and I'll be back in 15 minutes. If you wait for 15 minutes, I'll and don't eat the marshmallow, I'll give you two. And some of the kids, he walks out the door, they eat the marshmallow, and he thinks, okay, that they didn't have to do that. But what they were interested in was watching how these kids would delay gratification. Some kids pretended that the marshmallow wasn't there. Some kids would lie to themselves about, that they didn't like marshmallows. Every kid loves marshmallows.
Right.
Some kids would distract themselves and play with other games. Other kids would argue with themselves. They go, no, 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 no. And you could see that it was effortful. And you can go on the internet and you can find videos of replications of his study. There are no videos of his first study because it was the 60s, and getting film cameras was difficult and expensive. So you can see these kids in these recreations all around the world. This is not just an American phenomenon. You can see kids from all countries all around the world doing this effortful, I'm not gonna eat the marshmallow. Now, that's a cool story, and you see the strategies that kids, or the tactics that some kids use to delay the gratification. But what happened was Michel, he was a young researcher at the time. He didn't have a lot of money, so he used what's called a sample of convenience. And a sample of convenience is essentially a bunch of kids that you can do an experiment for nothing. And he had to find a group of kids nearby. Well, he was at a university, and the university had a university daycare, and they had for university professors' kids, and they had a university elementary, junior high, and high school. Well, his daughter is in this preschool at the time he's doing this experiment. I don't know if she was part of the experiment, but he's doing the experiment with preschoolers that go to his daughter's preschool. Well, she's growing up. The kids that she's in preschool are growing up, and they're having a conversation as she's getting ready to go to college about whatever became of those kids. And some of the kids went way off the rails, and other kids turned out. And so he reanalyzed the data. He looked at the school records of the kids she went to school with, and he found out, correlating back to what they did when they were 3 or 4 years old, he found out that kids who waited for the second marshmallow were rated as more popular by their peers, more responsible by their teachers, less likely to be in trouble with the law, more likely to go to college, and objectively, they had SAT scores that were 210 points higher than the ones who ate the marshmallow.
Wow.
So what it tells us, and this is why this is such an important research study, is that the childhood skill of the delay of gratification is a predictor of lifelong success. And so
Powerful.
every successful person in adulthood has learned how to delay gratification in childhood. And if you can't do that in adulthood, you got a lot of learning to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So going on to our next topics, and the reason that I wanted to proceed these two topics with delay of gratification is because some people are going to get super frustrated if they can't be disciplined or have consistency in their life because they don't know how to delay gratification. So they wonder why I start something and I bounce out, because you have to be intentional about delaying what you want to do versus what you need to do, which is what's discipline, right? The willingness.
Discipline.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Willingness is the willingness to endure present suffering for a desired future gain. And there's no guarantee you'll get the future gain, but it's current unpleasantness. People want discipline without it hurting. It doesn't work that way. That's not how human beings work. If you want discipline without some level of suffering, it's not discipline. It's just pleasure. And human beings don't grow, change, become stronger without some suffering. If you're lifting weights and it's not a little bit unpleasant, it's not really lifting weights, is
Yeah.
it?
Playing at the gym.
Uh, why even go to the gym?
Right.
People go, I'm doing those 12-ounce curls every weekend. As they're drinking beer.
Yeah.
That's not exercise. That's drinking beer. You don't call it. It doesn't hurt. There's no unpleasantness. Human beings are, and all animals are creatures of contrast. And if we have the same stimuli constantly, it just becomes background noise. So human beings need strain, unpleasantness, and then they need recovery, pleasantness. And we don't enjoy the recovery unless we've had the strain. So if I work really hard and I rest, there's a contrast there. If I don't work hard and I just rest, well, that's just sloth.
Right.
And so we need that contrast. The way human beings are built, and the example I use a lot is people go, oh, I'd like some caviar, and the reason caviar is so special is because you never have it. You get little caviar on toast points and you eat it and go, ooh, that's really delectable, or whatever you say about caviar.
Yeah. If you had it every day, wouldn't be so.
If you have it every day, it rapidly becomes fish eggs, because that's what caviar is.
Right.
It's like more fish eggs. I got to eat more fish eggs.
Yeah.
So we need the absence of the stimuli, and then the presence of the stimuli. That's what makes it special. That's what makes it good, which is why rest and recovery is so good after you've worked, because of the contrast. If I lay on the couch all day Saturday, I feel awful.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Going to the movies is one of my favorite things. I love to go to the movies.
Same.
When my children were little, we got the whole Back to the Future trilogy.
Oh, nice.
And we decided we're going to do a movie marathon, and we watched all of the Back to the Future movies.
Binged it.
At the end, I felt awful. My kids felt awful. We never wanted to do that again, because sitting for the whole day watching movies was awful. Yeah. So we needed the contrast.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
By the way, they're great movies. I just, for my family, watching all of them was awful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can imagine that many hours sitting on a couch or, whatever.
Yeah.
So what is it about, I'm trying to think of how to best ask this question, but the things that we don't want to do, right? Like suffering is clearly you don't want to do these things. So we feel like we're suffering. It seems like things are kind of just designed that way, that the things that are ultimately going to benefit us the most, I think you just answered that now that I'm asking the question, it's to keep us moving, like to make us progress. If we just always did what was comfortable and what we'd like to do, if we like to do what's comfortable, we just always do that. Yeah. But there's no stress. There's no
stress. And human beings are built for a little bit of stress. Actually, gravity is a stress. Did you know that?
Sure. I mean, once you say it, it makes sense. But yeah,
it makes sense. And one of the problems we see with astronauts that are in low orbit with no gravity is their bodies start to fall apart. They begin to have organ failure.
Interesting.
So our bodies require gravity, stress, in order to function well. And when we remove that, not only do we become weaker, but our organs start to break down because we need that stress in order to live fully.
Yeah, yeah. Does this go into the anti-fragile side of things where...
Yeah.
I mean, explain that for the audience that hasn't heard.
Yeah. So Nassim Taleb came up with a concept called anti-fragile, and he's been, more recently, he's been very picky about its use, and he says it doesn't apply to humans, even though everybody, including me, says it that way. In his mind, and he's probably correct about this, is the more accurate term for human beings is called hormesis.
Okay.
And hormesis is essentially that it's lifting weights, that you lift a weight, you strain your body, and that helps you become more, using his word, anti-fragile. It makes you more sturdy. And it is that suffering that is necessary in order for you to withstand adversity and become stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hormesis comes from this idea that you would take small bits of poison in order to build up an immunity to poison. So if you all ever saw The Princess Bride,
Yeah.
okay, that's hormesis.
Gotcha.
And Taleb wouldn't like it, but that's how the Dread Pirate Roberts made himself anti-fragile to poison.
One of my favorites for sure. All right, so we've talked about the need for delayed gratification. It's going to help you.
Can we go back one?
I'm sorry.
One
Yes,
slide.
to this
Behind every ought is a want.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, when they're talking about resolutions, they talk about what they ought to do. I ought to do this. I should do this.
Yeah.
And as I have examined people who use that language, behind every moral imperative, you ought to do this, you should do this, is a desire. It is a want. So let's look at an easy example. When you tell your kid you ought to cross at the crosswalk,
Okay.
you should cross at the crosswalk. Okay?
Yeah.
Why?
Safer.
What's behind that? What?
It's safer. I mean,
So you want to not get hit by a car.
Yeah.
So there's a desire. I want to maintain my bodily integrity. I want to put the odds in my favor that tonight I'll go home in one piece.
Yeah.
The moral imperative underneath it is a desire. And lots of people get hung up on should, ought, because they feel like somebody's telling them how to live. Oh, I'm not telling you how to live.
Right.
You don't tell me what to do. Okay, I don't have to tell you what to do. You do the thing and you get the bad result. You cross against the light. Okay, you get hit by a car. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
If you want to put the odds in your favor that you're not going to die by a bus, then you wait for the light to change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting analogy because the people that don't want to be told what to do, and there's certainly many of us, myself included, in certain aspects and times of my life, it's like, no, I just want to cross here. I want to be lazy. I don't want to walk all the way around to the crosswalk. It's like, okay, well, you were pushing back, and like you said, the consequences, the likelihood of a bad outcome can be a lot higher because I didn't go to the crosswalk. Doesn't necessarily mean that I got hit, but it just means the odds go up.
So when we talk about behavior that people are tired of their parents or some authority telling them you should go to the gym, you should eat less, you should eat better, all of that stuff. All those shoulds are somebody else's desire for you. I want you not to die. I want you to be in better physical shape.
Yeah.
But that's their desire.
Yeah.
So when you start to tell yourself, I should go to the gym, are you just imitating somebody else? Or are you really reflecting your internal desire?
Mm-hmm.
And my experience is that guilt is an incredibly efficient motivator, but not an effective motivator. So as long as I'm wagging my finger at you, making you feel guilty, you'll do it.
Yeah.
As soon as I go away,
doesn't work.
They're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So what I'm encouraging people is to start telling yourself what you want, because desire is a more effective long-term motivator than guilt.
Yep.
So when people look in the mirror and go, "You suck, you're a loser, you're fat, you're ugly," okay, so you go to the gym that day, but then come home and you've just told yourself you suck, you're a loser, you're fat,
Yeah.
worthless, whatever.
Yeah.
None of that's going to change things.
Right. Right.
But if you talk about what is it that you want, I want to feel better. I want to be stronger. That's more sustainable.
Yeah, and I think that's super important for folks to really process and get your head around. We talked in the last podcast about intrinsic versus extrinsic
Yep.
motivation, and that's a lot what you're saying is, do you need that personal coach to drive you, get you to the gym and to get you to do the things you need to do, or do I have a why, which we talked about the why as well. Like, why am I here? What do I want? Do I want to
Yep.
have more energy, more focus, be around for my grandkids, whatever that's going to be. So
Mhm.
I think that's something that cannot be overstated is the importance
Yeah.
of figuring out that intrinsic motivation and not some extrinsic that never has a long-term lasting effect.
Correct. Correct.
So,
I agree.
so, all right. So discipline. So we've got delayed gratification, why it's important to to discipline. And then
Yep.
now we've got to do these disciplines on a regular, ongoing, consistent basis. So here we are. What are the things that help us kind of or make us kind of fall out of that? Hey, I was disciplined yesterday, but today I can't seem to do it. So, or I skip, whatever that is.
Yeah. I think it's because we set expectations on ourselves that are unattainable consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And so my encouragement to people is set much smaller goals that you do more frequently,
And then build upon those.
and then build upon those. I mean, and that's the concept of a keystone habit,
Yeah.
which is once you get one habit going, then continue on. And if you look at what a single drop of water will do, if it's dropping, regularly, it will create a hole in a rock underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just water, but
Yeah.
it'll eventually, over the years, erode that rock and put a hole in it. It's this incredibly soft stuff and this incredibly hard stuff, but it's just that single drop of water,
Yeah.
repeated millions of times that makes that fundamental change.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraging people to think about drops of water rather than I'm going to drill through this rock right now. Just keep doing these tiny, consistent little things.
Yeah. I think instant gratification is certainly a cultural thing, right? I want this now, and I don't want to put in the, you know, Peyton Manning, back to him, right? He was clearly consistent. There's no way you get to a Super Bowl without being consistent. If you're going to do big things, these are hyper consistent people, right? In your
And he
experience.
came from a household. His dad was a University of Tennessee head coach. So Eli and Peyton and the whole family, they were all being consistent and disciplined from childhood. This was their world. This is how the world worked for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And real quick, I want to go back to Keystone Habits real quick because I've got a kind of a personal topic. And you've always said if you're going to make a Keystone Habit, I've asked you what would that be, and you said sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm that guy. I've been working through your expedition course and known you and working on all these things for years now, and I have struggled with sleep. I got sleep apnea, and I've tried pretty much almost everything under the sun. This year, I'm trying even more things, but I've noticed when I get sleep, I can be more disciplined. I can be more consistent because, and I'm probably butchering the way this is worded psychologically, but I have more energy. I have more focus to stay disciplined and consistent.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're tired, you have no kind of internal power to stay those things. So I've seen mild success, but I'm truly optimistic this year going forward, getting my sleep under control, that I can be more disciplined and consistent this year. So,
Okay. So how would you like me to respond to that? What's the question?
no, it's
I'm happy.
more the importance of sleep. I just, when you've said it to me, or we've said it in other podcasts, I just personally have really appreciated the importance of it, or the lack of it has made me realize that I totally agree with you is my point. I guess to
Yeah.
sum it all
Yeah.
up.
And for people who are listening to this episode for the first time, sleep is when your body repairs itself and grows. And if you don't have that sleep, your body can't repair itself, so it's not at 100% the next day. And so we need um, that eight plus hours of sleep for your brain to recover. Um, we have a daily decisional load, much like we have a daily push-up load. And once you've rested, you can do more push-ups. Once you've slept, you can make more decisions. And people, and I used to be one of them. It's like, boy, sleep is such an enormous waste of time. I could be so much more effective if I didn't have to sleep. Yeah, but it's an organic. Your brain is an organ. It's an organic entity, and it needs to recover. It needs to get more fuel. It needs to get rid of all the ick that's built up during the day. And I don't mean like mental ick. I mean
Right.
physical ick.
Physical.
Dead cells and bad chemistry and stuff that your brain is detoxifying from. It needs to get rid of all that and get more glucose, more ketones, more oxygen to fuel it, because those are the fuels your brain uses.
Yeah, and that's why I harp quite often during the introduction, and even during the podcast, is the neuro nerd side of things. Is, why is this stuff important? There's literally a biological reason why this stuff, can make or break you. And if you're
Yeah.
not repairing, you're not flushing out your system. And in part, I'm talking about sleep and appreciating what you're saying, but it's also kind of that cultural perspective of, I'll sleep when I die. I can grind harder than you. I can work harder. We've talked about the lack of balance in your life and all that, and that we can have on a later date. But if you're just, that guy that works 18 hours a day or whatever obnoxious number they come up with, that's not sustainable.
No, it's a sprint. I mean, and if all I got to do is run 50 yards, I can run really hard. But if I got to run a long time, I better conserve some fuel. And all that stuff is it's a sprint, and it will be followed by a collapse.
Yeah, yeah, and that's not if, but when, and then how hard.
Right. And with what permanent damage?
Ouch. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah, yeah, mental,
Absolutely.
physical. Yeah,
Absolutely. There's always a cost to
yeah,
pushing, over pushing. I
yeah.
mean, if I was to say I want you to pick up 100 pounds, you could do it. If I said I want you to pick up 1,000 pounds, and you figure out, you really screw up your courage and get this dose of adrenaline and pick it up off the mat for a couple inches, and then you go in for back surgery
Yeah,
because you've blown out your back.
yeah.
Okay, well then there's a permanent cost. The same is true with sleep debt. The same is true for working these 18-hour days without rest. It will cost you in your brain and in your body, because your body is overworking the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, faint, or freeze system.
Hmm.
It's the system that gets you going, and it's underworking the parasympathetic, which is the rest, digest, and repair system. And so you're going to break things by overusing the sympathetic nervous system, and break things because you haven't brought the parasympathetic nervous system back online.
Yeah, yeah. So the last thing I wanted to bring up in this episode is the idea that pick a thing. We talked last episode, some people just pick too many things. Yes, keystone habit, sleep, let's do that and be
Yep.
good at that. But then pick another habit. I mean, if you need to take some time to do that, then do that. But otherwise, don't pick 3 or 4 because you just overwhelm yourself. You fall apart, you get discouraged, and you let go of all of it. So, assess your life, which is one of the things that, your book covers really well, is what areas of your life are, healthy, mature, sustained, which ones are weak. Let's pick a habit that'll, bring up those, those areas of your life that aren't balanced. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up as kind of the last. Pick one, focus heavily on that, and stay diligent, disciplined, and consistent.
Yeah. Successful people pick one thing to change. And in my book, Staying Happy, I focus over and over again on changing one thing at a time. And if you'll do that consistently over life, you'll be incredible. I mean, you'll be a powerhouse if you just try one thing at a time till it becomes habits, till it's as easy as breathing. You're not thinking about it, and then you move on to the next thing that you're going to change.
Yeah, I think that's the other important thing that I want to state is, if you pick a habit, once it becomes muscle memory, kind of like brushing your teeth, right? That's not a habit that you have to, if you haven't learned that one by now, do that. But it's not something you have to intentionally think about. So pick a habit. Once it just becomes like brushing your teeth, then move on to the next habit. And then just rinse and repeat. A pun there, right?
Using the toothbrushing analogy. Yes, rinse and repeat. Yes.
I am a dad. My kids hate dad jokes, so I have to use them somewhere. So here I am. But anyway.
I think if you're a dad, every joke you tell is a dad joke. It doesn't matter what the quality of the joke is.
Well, we got to clean it up. We got to take out profanity and sexual innuendo and all that. So yeah, it becomes a dad joke. But I torture my kids because I send them a dad joke via text in a group, probably on average every 2 weeks. And they, I don't know, what do you call it when they go, ah, ha, they just kind of appease me, or what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, whatever.
They humor you.
Humor me. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Anyway, we'll leave it on that note. Let's talk about how people can get in touch with you, Dr. Hall. Let me bring up your website so you can share.
Yeah, you can visit me at drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com. You can follow me on social media at drrogerhall.com, and the doctor on that one is spelled out. On my website, drrogerhall.com, you can find out more about my books. I've got a new one in the pipeline called DIY Leader Brain. I've got an online course called Freak Out, which helps people to overcome fear. And we're working to get the expedition online, which is a project that you and I worked on together, Jared.
Yeah, all super exciting stuff. So yeah, if you've got any questions, comments, you want to learn more about the perfect real estate business, or get in touch with Dr. Hall, we'd absolutely love to have that conversation with you. But other than that, Dr. Hall, we just really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom and experience. And I'm highly confident that the people that embrace the things that you talk about are on a good track to improve their lives.
Thank you, Jared. I'm really grateful that you've set this up and that we're consistently doing it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, and we're just so everybody knows, we are practicing what we preach. We try as best we can. Life comes up. We might skip a week, but we get back on track and we just go. We try to measure and monitor that things are anyway. All the things, right? All the things. So, other than that, again, thank you, Dr. Hall, and we'll wish everybody a blessed one. Take care.
Thank you, Jared. Bye-bye.